Welcome to Bound by Books, where we talk all things books, writing, and craft. I am one of your hosts, Sherri Hayes, and I am joined today by Marianne Maria.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here.
Well, Marianne, how are you doing today? I know you're struggling with some allergies.
I am. So I've got my tissue, but just call me sneezy today.
Oh,
I'll be
well,
sneezy today.
oh well, it's that season. I
Yeah.
know my allergies have been flaring up every now and then, and I'm like, oh, the headache that just you can't focus, the
I
it's
know. And I took a Claritin last night about 1 a.m. And I woke up this morning. I was like, oh, I have to take another one. And my daughter was like, you're only allowed to take one of those every 24 hours. And I was like, oh my God, it's not working. So I checked the box to make sure it wasn't expired. And it's not. It's just my allergies are
just flared up.
they're in Olympic mode right now.
Oh, wow. And how
So
how how is your writing going currently? What are you working
um
on?
I am I'm about halfway through the Siren's Mate, which should have been done months and months ago, but it's I'm about halfway done. And it's kind of like I'm at that point where the plot line is actually clicked and it's like things are moving
Yeah,
along. So I'm hoping I can get finished with the book in about 10 days. If I
that
can
always
get that done,
helps.
because then I have a couple others that I need to start. I was going to work on two at a time, but my dad's been sick, as you and I were discussing before we hit record, and I had
Right.
to fly to Florida for about 10 days to see to him. So that kind of threw a monkey wrench into a little bit of writing time, but I'm back in the saddle. So
Yeah,
it's
well,
always something,
yeah,
right?
because I know that we kind of touched base about a month ago. We were talking about our writing projects in our group, and you were like, "Oh, I'm hoping I can get it published by the end of March, beginning of April." And do you have
Uh,
a rough publication date you're shooting for now?
I'm thinking um, I'm going to aim for the middle of, I mean, today's already the 4th. I was going to aim for the middle of April to get it to my editor, which is a good segue into what we are discussing today, isn't
Yes,
it?
yes, yes, yes. We are discussing editing and editors today, and of what you should look for, what you should avoid. Uh, but we're going to start with this topic. We thought we would start uh, for those who are maybe new to the writing world, or aspiring authors, to kind of talk about the different types of editors.
Absolutely.
And because not all editors are created equal, not just in whether they're good or not, but also in the types of edits that they are doing for you, the services they're performing for you as an author. And as with everything else, the type of edit they're performing is going to determine how much they are going to charge you for that edit.
Yes, they are definitely a necessary evil. And I remember back in the day, there used to be a publication, and it might even be online now. It used to be called Editors and Predators.
Mm.
And it was a guide for new authors as to which which editing houses and even publishing houses, to an extent, that you should stay away from, that did not have a good
Mhm.
reputation. Of course, in the indie world, most of those had to do with trad publishers and trad editors and
Mhm.
so forth. But in the indie world, it's usually word of mouth and getting references from author friends on where to go. And
Mhm.
so let's talk about it.
Yeah.
You take the first one.
Okay. So probably the most common type of editor that, in my opinion, every author should have. Um, I know there's that controversial thing out there of, self-editing and publishing without hiring a professional editor. I happen to be very against that, because I don't think, no matter how good of an editor you are personally at catching, your own mistakes, you have read this thing a million times if you're self-editing, and you know what it's supposed to say.
Yeah.
You know in your head what it's supposed to say, and you're gonna miss stuff. I mean, there's things I've read, I could read a sentence 10 times and I may think it's things and I may be missing a word.
Your
So I
brain
may not,
automatically fixes
right.
that.
Your brain automatically fixes it. It's just a human thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I am fully in the camp that you need to have what are called either copy editors or line editors. And they are slightly different, but usually when you hire a copy editor, they also do line edits. That's also kind of included in the package that they give you. And they're basically what they're basically looking for is sentence structure and spelling and grammar. And when I say sentence structure, we'll kind of get into the difference between that and a different type of editor.
Yep.
But sentence structure, when I say like if you have, they're looking like if you have an awkward sentence, that maybe you need some,
Clunky.
it needs to be some tweaking or, twisting it around or something. Maybe you think it makes sense in your head, but when you read it, it's like if your editor has to read it 5 times to figure out what you're saying, then maybe you need to reword it, that kind
Yep.
of stuff. So they'll flag that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly 99% of it is going to be spelling and grammar though. 99% of it.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I always I always attribute that to when clunky sentences and ones that don't make the beat of how of the pacing that you've got going on in your story. There's a natural flow and a natural beat to the way to how many words should be in in what you're saying and how you break it up. And it always goes in conjunction, at least as far as I can tell, in my own experience, in how you need to allow the reader to take a breath. You know what I mean? And also how you break it up with maybe some shorter staccato sentences and then a longer sentence. That's what I mean by beats. To kind of have a natural rhythm.
But yeah, because we don't start when we're talking naturally. We don't always say he did this, she did that, they went there. Right. You don't talk. People don't talk like that, and they don't like to read that way. It's fine to say she went to the store, but your next sentence shouldn't be exactly the same type of beats. There should be a flowing rhythm up and down that it's more appealing to a reader. And that's the type of thing that a copy editor, line editor is going to look for. However, if there is a lot of issues with that, if that also includes some issues with, like, if you send it to a copy editor and they read your story and they're like, this really needs a lot of work. Like there's plot holes in here. There's your sentence structures all over the place. It doesn't have a good flow. They are most likely going to recommend that you use a developmental editor.
Right. A developmental editor, as far as I'm concerned, is someone who's going to help you flesh out your story. It's going to help you flesh out the beats. It's going to help you flesh out your plot, your character arcs, and point out the pacing also, and how you can keep the reader engaged, and whether or not your chapters and your scenes are moving your story forward, that they're not just there for for page filler or gratuitous words.
Right. So and you don't have any contradictions. Like you don't have your character as blonde-haired, blue-eyed in your first chapter when you're introducing them, and then suddenly they're a redhead.
Well, I think that would probably fall under copy and line. Developmental is more plot driven, as far at least in my experience. I mean, when I first started out, reaching, I had an editor give this to me. It was called Sharpening the Quill, and it was a PDF, and I don't know where she got it from. For all I know, it's plagiarized. I have no idea, but she gave it to me. And she said that it was basically the mechanics of writing. And this was like a primer. This is like writing 101. And it was all of the things that editors, the red flags that they look for, including passive voice, which is using a lot of ly adverbs, or too many gerunds, like ing, was
Mhm.
going,
Mhm.
was falling, was saying, that type of thing, and that you need more of an active voice in what you're in the way you're writing. Or what Margie Lawson, who is she's like my guru when it comes to um, teaching you how to get the most bang out of your writing in terms of being more evocative and having your characters be as emotive as possible. What she refers to as fresh writing, where it's not the same humdrum get the job done type of writing. It's interspersed with fresh writing, things that catch your eye, that are like, oh, that phrase is so, it's you just want to bite it. It's so juicy. You know what I mean? I don't mean spicy. I mean just like it's said in a way that is new and fresh. So that's what I think of when I think of a developmental editor.
I think, I guess for me, when I think of a developmental, again, I think it's a matter of the level and the severity of the edits needed. Because to me, if it's a minor point here and there of, sentence structures off, or a minor plot hole, even something like that, then usually a copy editor will just flag it for you, and then you can go in and you can fix it. But if it's riddled throughout your entire manuscript of, either a huge plot hole or several small plot holes, you've got characters that just aren't consistent, your sentence structure is things, because the developmental editors that I have known, they will work with you to literally tear your story apart and rebuild it back, with you again. Like
Yeah.
they'll go through it chapter by chapter, line by line, if need be, to help you construct a very well-rounded story. But again, you still have to have copy edits after the developmental edit, because if you have to have a developmental edit, you still are going to need, because they're not really focusing on, it's not that they're not going to catch the, some of the grammar stuff, but they're not focused on that. They're focused on the story, how it flows, your plot, and the overall arc of the story. They're not focused on those little, like, do you have the comma in the right place?
No, that I don't even think a line editor. I mean, they might line editors, copy editors, but that's more for a proofreader too, is to make sure that the punctuation is correct. And that there's nothing really missing. I guess in some respects, some of the jobs do overlap.
Yeah,
Because when I have my editor look at things, my editor will let me know that if something's clunky, but also she'll let me know if there are some loose ends that I didn't tie up.
Mm-hmm.
I bring something up in one of the conflicts that I've got, because there's always the main conflict and then sub conflicts that are going on. If I didn't tie one up, towards the end. So there is some overlap, but a developmental editor is probably the most expensive editor you will ever have in your life, because of the weight of what you're asking them to do. You're asking them to help you develop your story, and they could run as much as 50 or plus dollars an hour, to help you. Whereas I think, proofreaders are the low man on the totem pole. Not that they're low, because they are a necessary evil as well. The way that I do things is you can't have a one-stop shop. You need to have more than one person with a set of eyes on it. You can't have the person who's your copy / line editor also do your proofreading, because their eyes are going to become accustomed to it, or blind to the mistakes that you have. You need somebody with a fresh set of eyes to do your proofreading. And which will bring us to the, I think the natural break as to, what are some red flags that you look for when you're looking to hire an editor, and what things that are not just red flags, but what things you should expect.
Right. Right. Well, first of all, if you're looking for an editor, the best thing to do is ask for recommendations. And not just one, or like if somebody says, oh, this is the editor I use, I love this person, you should use this person. That's fine. That's great. Take that as a recommendation. But I would recommend, it's kind of like how they tell you if you're going to get work done on your house, that should get a minimum of three bids. This isn't quite the same, but you should audition at least 3 people.
Yep.
For your editor.
Yep.
And what I mean by audition is you should reach out to them and ask, and most editors, if most respectable editors, we will put it that way, will offer you a sample edit, to do a sample edit for you. Now they're not gonna do your whole manuscript for free, but they will usually do a page or up to 1,000 words of an edit. So you can see what type of edits you will be getting for what you will be paying them, how they do it. And it's really important to see that. And if they say, no, I don't do sample edits,
it's a
big red flag. Big red flag. Because if they're confident in their work, they should be willing to do a sample edit for you, to give a new client the opportunity to see. I mean, one of the first things that, for those of you who have been listening for a while, you may know that my husband is a woodworker. And one of the first things that potential clients ask is they want to see his work. They want to see the quality of his work, so that, they can see what they would be getting if they purchased something from him. This is no different. You need to see what type it is. And for a multitude of reasons, not only do you need to see how detail oriented they are, but you also need to see the vibe that they're putting off, because some authors they like harsh criticism, and some authors like to kind of be coddled a little bit which, if you're more in the coddling thing, I would highly recommend you get a little thicker skin, because as soon as your book hits the bookshelves, the internet bookshelves, and reviews start coming in, you will get negative reviews, whether you have the best book in the world or not. So, and honestly, I personally would rather have an editor tell me that something sucks, so that I can fix it before it goes out to the world, than to just tell me, oh, everything's great, it was so awesome, and not tell me it's like, oh, your book is fine, it doesn't need anything, I just some minor stuff here or there. No,
that doesn't exist.
No,
that doesn't exist.
We'll keep names out of it. They actually had an experience. I had the same editor for years, and she was one of my editors when I was published with a small press. And when that small press closed its doors, I continued to use her. She went freelance, and I continued to use her. Loved her. She was awesome. She told it like it is. We didn't always see eye to eye on every edit, recommendation that she gave me. But she marked everything. She would tell me, this doesn't make sense, or, I really think you should maybe use this word instead of this word. It's just better for explaining what you want. It's great. I mean, she would send me my manuscript back, and it would have red all over it, which, is fine. That's what it thinks, because first of all, spelling and grammar are exactly. Well, spelling and grammar are my weakness. Plot is not. I mean, I'm very good at plot and storytelling, but the spelling and grammar stuff, I suck at it. I just do. I always have. I just suck at it. So, I expect for a line/copy editor to literally mark up my story. So she ended up, when COVID started rearing its ugly head and turning the world crazy, she had to go back to work, because of course authors and creatives across the globe were having trouble creating. They were getting writer's block, because they weren't able to focus on their stories, and they weren't producing as much to publish. And so she ended up having to go and get a full-time job. And she tried to do some freelance stuff on the side, but it just wasn't enough to Like it was conflicting with her home life and her job, and she just wasn't able to dedicate the amount of hours. So she stopped freelancing. So when I had a new book, I was stuck trying to find a new editor. I went the recommendation route. I actually had her recommend somebody, and I had somebody else recommend somebody. I was like, okay. So the person I ended up using, I actually did not do what we talked about recommending. I did not get a sample. I did not ask for any of that because, again, it was a recommendation by some people that I trusted. And I hated it. The edit was subpar in my opinion, especially to what I was used to for my previous editor. And there were some other red flags that were down the line as to wanting me to send the payment via friends and family on PayPal instead of her sending me an invoice, things like that. And it was,
well, that's something you can discuss with your,
right.
If you have a relationship with your editor, you can always discuss how you're going to go about payment. I mean, I have author friends of mine who send their editor a chunk of money and then just kind of bank it, and like, okay, when we're getting close to this, let's, let me know.
But these are editors that they've worked with in the past, I'm assuming. This is not a new editor to them, and they have a history. So they have a relationship. They know what they're getting for what they're paying for.
Yes.
And like I said, in this particular case, this was a new to me editor. But somebody who was supposedly knew what they were doing and was good at their job. And like I said, I ended up having to not only pay them, I ended up having to pay 2 other editors because I went and I had to scramble trying to get another editor to proofread it to try to catch what I felt she didn't catch. But then that proofreader still wasn't like what I still wasn't happy with it. I still felt that there had to be more that was missed. So I had to find a third person. So I ended up spending more money instead of just going and doing the testing that I really should have done at the beginning and having the sample edits. Luckily, I have found another editor since then. I had another release since then. And I went in search of a new editor because I was not going to use the one that I had used before. And this one, of course, I again sent out 3 samples, and this one was the one that I liked her edits the most. She caught the most things, and had some notes to the side. So I was very happy. So thankfully, I found a new editor. Yay! Do you use the same have you been using the same person for a really long time?
I have gone through a couple of editors over the years. I have basically the same group that I use, that if one is not available, I have somebody else that I can use. And when I send one to one editor, the other one will proofread for me if they, if it's a one-stop shop. Passion Ink is another one, was one of the ones that I've used. And it's Kate Douglas, and she has not only herself as an editor, but she's got other people on staff as well. And then I used Ink It Out as well. And Shelley Peeler is wonderful, with some of the things she does. Unfortunately, no one person is going to catch everything. I mean, that at least has been my experience. Even when I've recently read trad books, they're just, unfortunately, things slip through, and they've got armies of editors. So you can't sweat the small stuff like that. You can't.
It's not realistic to expect an editor to catch everything, because again, they're reading a book that is, even if let's say it's a novella and it's a 40,000 word novella. That's 40,000 words that they're reading. You have to think about that on that type of a scale. It's not like they're just reading a small paragraph and, editing that. I mean, they're reading 40,000 words and trying to go through and find any errors that are in there. And they're looking for so many different things. So, but in that same respect, the things that they don't catch should be reasonable. I mean,
Yeah, of course.
you shouldn't have, you shouldn't have, errors on every single page.
No, of course
It
not.
should be
And
few
the
and
end
far
result
between.
the end game lies with the author as well,
Mhm.
to go through it, even after it's been edited, to read it one last time. And let's face it, most of us as indies don't build in that time to go in
Not
and
usually.
read it. We're usually on to the next project by the time something comes
Yeah.
on, or we're engrossed in marketing and getting ready for launch, that we don't read it the fourth time that it needs to be read, which is why I think a lot of authors do spend time editing as they go along, to make sure that they use other devices to help them before
Mhm.
it gets to the editor. Because a good practice, at least as far as I am concerned, is that your manuscript needs to be polished before you
Mhm.
send it to the editor. Think about you sending your book to an editor the same way that you would send it out if you were querying. You're not going to
Mhm.
send something that just goes right from your brain to your fingers onto the page, and onto the keyboard. You're going to have misspelled words, missing words, and so forth, because I don't know
Mhm.
anybody who types as fast as they think, as the story evolves in your head.
No.
So, I mean, you have to give it a polish, even if it's just a cursory one, before you send it to your editor. Otherwise, you're sending them a mess, and you expecting them to, it's like having somebody come and clean your house and you don't bother to pick up your dirty underwear from in front of your bed. I mean, it's nasty, just don't do that. you know just don't do that.
Now I
So
know Danielle Bannister, one of our fellow co-hosts for the podcast. She is a big fan of dictation, of the word dictation, where it will actually read the manuscript back to you.
I do that as well.
And she really, really likes that.
Read
So
aloud function that,
yeah.
I've got. I do it all the time. I have it read back to me, but I have to say, it can be a quagmire where you are, you're just having it read it back to you a billion times, and you're tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it until that you realize you've been tweaking the same scene for days and you haven't moved on. So you have to, you know, keep yourself in check, that you all right, get the story written and then have it read it back to you, and then you can use the function as part of your polishing tool, as opposed to
Yeah.
just doing it ad nauseum.
Right, exactly. So that kind of gives an overview of the editors, but let's kind of discuss, we've discussed what the different types are, but let's talk about what everybody wants to know in the publishing world. How much is it going to cost you? Because that's always my question whenever somebody says, oh, you need this, or you need that, or you gotta have, this is the greatest thing. It's okay, how much is it going to cost? Because as in
It's
the indie
varies
world,
though, Sherry, that.
well, yeah, but in the indie world especially, we're paying for all of this ourselves. It's an investment in our own writing, so you want to go in with it to know what it is. So let's start with the developmental editor. You said that it's about
50
$50 an
$50 an hour
hour.
plus.
Right. Plus, and again, this does vary. That's the problem with editing, is because it is so varied as to how much it costs. As far as copy editing, line editing, I have seen on the low end, I've seen about 0.04. And on
Yep.
the high end, I have seen all the way up to, I think the most recently I saw somebody was asking 2 cents. Insane. But I have seen quite a few that are up around a penny a word. So
A
that's,
proofreader.
no, this was a line copy
Oh,
editor.
okay.
Line copy editor. Now proofreaders should be cheaper than that.
Yep, they should be.
Because again,
Point zero
they're kind
zero
of,
point zero
yeah,
zero 0.003 cents a word. Yeah. So less
Right.
than a penny a word, about a third of a cent a word for
Right.
proofreaders. And it really depends also on time,
Mhm.
because if you're going to call up an editor and say, hey, I have a pre-order, and I have to have it uploaded to KDP in a week's time, and you sending
Mhm.
them a full-length novel, 80,000 words plus, and you're telling them that you want them to do 2 passes and then have a proofreader, and you're only giving them a week, you're going to
Yep.
incur extra costs, because
Oh
that's
yeah,
like
it's a
asking them
rush
to take,
job.
yeah, it's like asking them to take somebody. And plus also you have to also, if you're setting them a mess as well, that it's going to take them longer to get through. If
Mhm.
you send them a mess and it comes back and your pages are bleeding red because of all of the problems that you've had, the editor is going to turn you around and say, hey, you need to go through this, and you need to polish this up before you send it to me.
Mhm.
Because it's not their job to write the book for you. It's not their job
Mhm.
to make sure that the mechanics of your writing are correct. You have to have that innate talent in yourself. You
Mhm.
can't expect them to do it for you. And if
Not
they
unless
are,
you're paying a developmental editor. That's
no,
what I mean. If
yeah,
you want that much editing, you need to have a developmental editor. And I will also say, speaking of developmental edits, those can take months.
yes, they can.
So you can't, if you're thinking that you need a developmental editor, you do not want to be done with the manuscript and expect to publish it next week
I
on,
had a I had a developmental
yeah.
editor take a look at the first book and the second book of my Cursed by Blood series, because I have believed for quite a while that those 2 books should be merged, because the first one is a long novella. It's about 44,000 words. And the other one is 111,000 words. And I think that they should be merged. But I also know that in doing so, yeah, I have to make sure that there are no redundancies, that I'm not already telling the reader something they already know,
Right.
because the books were separate and now I'm putting them together. There is a natural tightening that has to happen,
Right.
and also the pacing of the books have to match. So she looked at them and she said she read them like 6 times each to try and put them together. And she was very honest with me. And she said, this is a bigger job than I expected. Even though they seamlessly pick up where one leaves off, there's still there's a lot of emotion that needs to be um, corralled and moved and so forth. And she did not want to take it on because she just did not have the time
Mm.
to devote to this. But reading it 6 times and making some of the edits that she did, um, I was lucky that she was just like, nope, because I didn't finish it, I'm not going to charge you. Because I really didn't get
Mm.
into it, I'm not going to charge you. Because the amount of time that she spent would have probably cost about $4,000.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
can get very, very pricey. So just don't assume,
Mhm.
oh, I'll just get a developmental editor. You have to make sure that you understand what you're taking on with something like
Right.
that.
And understand, especially if you are a new author, that it could take you 10 years to make that type of money back,
Yeah.
the investment back, because you do, depending on how fast you write and how quickly you get a backlist, compiled, on how marketable your books, the genre of books that you're writing are, it could be years before you come close, before you make that money back, realistically, because you have to break down, how much are you selling that book for, how much are you planning to sell that book for, and what are you actually going to get per book for, after Amazon takes their cut, or Barnes and Noble, whoever it is, takes their cut, how much are you actually getting in your pocket? And then you need to take that and divide that by the cost of that developmental edit. However, that's one of the reasons why it kind of, you got to kind of look at what is going to benefit you the most as an author. Maybe if maybe taking some classes on craft and creative writing would actually be better for you than to do a developmental edit. Maybe you can catch a lot of those things and fix them yourself before, so you won't have to go the developmental edit route and you can just go directly to a copy edit. But there are, either that, or I would recommend, if you're really, really needing a developmental edit, sometimes going through a small press is the right way to go, because they have developmental editors on their staff most of the time. And that way you can get the developmental edit without having to incur the cost of the developmental edit.
Well, I mean, there's costs and then there's costs, because if you are going to sign with a small press, you understand that they're going to do editing and they're going to have you're going to have an editor assigned to you who's going to
Right.
baby your book along with you, and help bring you along, but you're also going to give them the lion's share of your royalties.
Yeah.
So I mean,
but you're either going to
pay, paying one way or the other.
Yeah,
Yep.
You're going to pay for it one way or the other. You're either going to pay for it up front, or you're going to pay for it, as you sell. So you just have to kind of decide what where you want to incur that cost.
Correct. And mechanics of writing is important. The mechanics of writing is the bread and butter of your writing. It's knowing, how to craft the story. I mean, anybody can come up with a great idea for a plot. It's actually fleshing it out that is the hardest part. Yes.
Yeah. And so again, that kind of goes back to taking classes on craft and creative writing. If that is your weakness, like I said, my weakness is spelling and grammar. I know that going in, it always has been. And even though I have gotten better over the years, the more I've written, it's still where I struggle most as an author. So I know going into it that I let my editors, any editor, I mean, my new editor, when I was communicating back and forth with her, initially I told her, I said, my issues are spelling and grammar. My plots are usually pretty strong. My storylines, all that kind of stuff, my flow, I don't have big issues with that. Mine are spelling and grammar. So being upfront about both, not only with yourself, but also with your editor, what your weaknesses are. Be honest about that. If if your sentence structure sucks, then, you need to know that, and maybe figure out if there's a way that you can work on that and work to improve that, or at least be conscious of it while you're writing. Like, okay, well, maybe I should kind of focus on my sentence structure when I go back and do my read through and see how everything is. Am I using the same word to start my sentence over and over and over again?
Yes. And also the other things that you need to make sure that your editor is picking up on, like overly used words, weak words, like just, that type of thing, that, the filler words that are unnecessary.
I remember when I started writing, that was in my first couple of manuscripts, just was the word. Everything was just this, just that.
Yeah.
There were, I don't even know how many but it can be other things as well, because when I was with a small press, my editor and I were talking about a manuscript, and we were just kind of shooting the breeze and stuff. And she was telling me, she's like, your manuscript was so refreshing. She said, because the one I just got done editing, she's like, there were over 450 times the F word was used.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Really?
She's like, yeah. She's like, and the author didn't want to take out any of them. She's like, you gotta pare this down. You cannot have 450 plus uses of the F word. You just can't. But
I remember that I knew that Kate was a good editor when I got my corrections back from her, and she was saying, using phrases like misplaced modifier. And, and so I knew she knew what she was doing, because, a misplaced modifier is a phrase or a clause that is placed awkwardly in a sentence, and it modifies the wrong word, and I was just, and it some of it is colloquial, the way that you speak in whatever region you come from. But so I would have to kind of go back and fix them. Thank God there weren't too many of them, but it's because she understood and used the correct phraseology on how to, to identify what was wrong. I knew that she was a good editor at that point in time. Shelly, she has just an innate ear, for how the sentences should flow, and just a natural way of catching the beat of and pacing of a story. So, and she's usually really good about telling me that my Oxford commas are wrong. So, and that's another story is, to Oxford comma or to not Oxford comma, that is the question.
That is the question. I guess we'll leave it on that note, to Oxford comma or to not. Well, you can weigh in and let us know if you're on YouTube in the comments, or you can head over to our website and leave a comment over there and let us know, are you an Oxford comma fan or not? But I hope you all have enjoyed today's podcast, and we're recording this a little early, but it will, when it airs, that's going to be my release week. I will be releasing the next day. So I have a new book coming out. I'm so excited. It's going to be my very first release of new content in about 2 years. So I'm really excited about it. I'm so excited.
Congratulations. Hopefully I'll be finished with mine that I've owed to my readers forever. So
you'll get it. So it'll get there. Life happens, and life happened with me too. So it took me a while.
Excuse me for being, the sniffle queen, today. I thought I was going to have to sneeze. I actually even moved my mic out of the way and kind of looked up at the light. And I was like, nope, not happening. So
you saved it. You saved it. All right. Well, thank you all for listening, and I hope you will tune in next week, noon Eastern Standard Time on Monday for the next episode of Bound by Books. Bye.
Wait! Before you go, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and check us out on our website, boundbybookspodcast.com.